It's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service and from our headquarters studios in Abuja. Our first conversation today is on the destruction of assets using stealing crude oil and the impact thereof on the environment. Let's listen to this background put together by our correspondent, Dr. Alabi.
According to the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NTA, Nigeria lost more than 619.7 million barrels of crude oil to theft between 2009 and 2020. This translates to a total value of $46.16 billion. The average daily loss during this period was approximately 140,000 barrels, valued at $10.7 million. Meanwhile, there were 148 crude oil theft incidents documented according to the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) between September 2 and 8, 2023. These incidents included the discovery of 78 illegal refineries, 14 automatic identification system AIS infractions involving vessels, 8 instances of illegal connections, 34 arrests related to wooden boats, 8 vehicle-related arrests, the detection of 4 oil spills, 1 vessel arrest, as well as incidents of pipeline vandalism. After recording 148 crude oil theft incidents in 6 days, on July 11, 2023, NNPC Limited intercepted an 800,000-litre vessel carrying stolen crude offshore while heading to Cameroon, which was destroyed as a deterrent to oil thieves. The recurring decimal of theft of Nigeria's crude oil and the inability of authorities to put a stop to it is certainly worrisome. In an effort to deal with the situation, oil theft assets, including vessels, have in recent times been destroyed along with its content, thus presenting another loss to the country and impacting the environment negatively. Analysts have criticized the destruction of the vessel and some assets apprehended for suspected oil theft, which they say amounts to destruction of evidence that could be possibly used for prosecuting culprits. For advocates of environmental protection, the concept of burning illegal refineries, stolen crude, and the vessels bearing such items is unhealthy, beside the fact that it does not serve as the right antidote to oil theft. Environmentalists have raised the question of the avoidable environmental impact the burning of crude constitutes at a time when the whole world is in a race to reduce carbon emission. More fundamentally, it does not make economic sense to destroy such costly crude and its assets at a time the country seriously needs funds. Observers say an oil-producing country like Nigeria has no excuse being unable to monitor its oil and gas assets and production facilities using technology and community engagement. How can Nigeria better deal with the menace of oil theft without further harming the environment and putting the lives of the inhabitants in danger? What are the best global practices? How do communities come in to assist the government tackle oil theft? These, among other pertinent issues, are what our guests will be addressing on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
And to discuss the topic today, first we have Idris Olubola Musa, Director General, National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, NOSTRA. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Here with us as well is Professor John Osonwa. Professor Osonwa is a climate change and environmental expert. He's also a consultant to the UN and National Assembly. We're glad to have you this morning with us, Prof.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And joining us via Zoom from the United States is architect Nemo Bassi, Executive Director, Health of Mother Earth Foundation. Architect Nemo Bassi, we're glad to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Okay, we know it's still small hours there, so we appreciate the fact that we have disturbed your sleep. And but this is a very significant topic, an issue that you are also very concerned about. In times past, the chief concern had to do with the pollution arising from oil exploration and production activities, as well as accidents in the process, and sometimes also the sabotage of oil facilities. But our focus this morning has to do with the attempts by the security agencies to stamp out crude oil theft, which has become quite rife in the oil-producing regions of the country. And I'm sure you saw some of the footage in the course of the background report. How worrisome in terms of the pollution consequences are the activities of the security agencies in putting out of business the criminal elements responsible for stealing crude oil?
Thank you very much. It's indeed a very disturbing incident to keep seeing the level of environmental pollution related to people tampering with oil facilities, and then to compound this, the military, the security forces, and their agents blowing up either shooting ships loaded with crude oil or setting boats and the illegal refineries on fire. The pollution is enormous. It can hardly be quantified. We have to just look at the amount of pollution that happened in Ogoniland before the rise of this artisanal refining, and then look at what is going on in Bayelsa State. The recent report by the Bayelsa Oil and Environment Commission showed that there is a per capita pollution of 1.5 barrels on everyone living in Bayelsa State. That is mind-boggling. And then beyond what we read in the Ogoni report, the unit report on Ogoniland, we're also seeing in this new report that we have hydrocarbons pollution, total hydrocarbon pollution up to 1 million times above safe limits. And then you have some chemical elements like cadmium or chromium about several times above safe limits. This is very disturbing because we believe that, one, stealing oil theft is bad, and those doing it should be brought to book. But to compound the problem for an already polluted environment by exposing our people to such danger through environmental pollution is clearly unacceptable. It's not only affecting humans, it's affecting biodiversity, the aquatic ecosystem, it's affecting livelihoods, and it's something that can be done in a different way. Those installations are not complex refineries. They can be dismantled. And if a boat is caught with illegal crude, can be taken to somewhere else where it can be handled safely. We're not seeing this happening.
So let's remain with you now that we have a clear signal from New York. Now, there are two things here. One is oil stealing or stealing of crude oil. Another is illegal refining of the oil stealing, which of course brings about the environmental destruction that we are talking about this morning. And considering the fact that the agencies concerned in terms of curbing or mitigating have devised a means of doing that which does not augur well for the environment. That is total outright destruction of the facilities, some of which contain crude oil themselves. And again, when they are destroyed, it's spilling all over the place. Of course, the damage is very clear from the reports that we showed before we started this conversation. Now, what would be the right approach to the situation at the moment? Because presently, the refining business is still ongoing, despite the fact that there are serious efforts by government to stop it. Now, I believe you come from that environment as well. What will be the overall approach to this, considering the fact that already we are in a very dicey situation, considering the destruction of the environment so far in that environment?
Well, no matter how dire the economic situation is, and in fact, you are right, we all know that the amount of losses in the oil sector is enormous. But this is just one aspect of oil theft. And and illegal events in the oil fields of the Niger Delta. Clearly, the security forces need to consider their own environmental responsibilities. They should be worried that one drop of oil is allowed to enter the environment. And we need to remind ourselves that a drop of oil will contaminate 25 liters of water, potable water, making it unfit for human consumption. And so no matter what, I think the blow-ups is actually to display to the public that, look, we're working very hard, we're doing things. But of course, we need to support the security forces, but there are better ways. There are better ways to do what they're doing. They should just comprehend, arrest the boats that are illegal, take them away. And if it's a refining location, they should be able to dismantle them, cordon the areas. We've seen recently in other countries where boats, a ship that was suspected that could possibly leak oil into the water, received a lot of attention. A lot of experts were gathered around. They secured that ship and ensured that the oil was transferred and taken away and was not allowed to leak into the environment. But in Nigeria, we're seeing absolute impunity. What the security forces are doing is something they ought not to do, and they should also be held to account for exposing our people to such terrible harms.
Well, Architect Numobasi, thanks. In the meantime, we're going to pause you and return to you in the course of the conversation. Back to the studios here, Professor John Osonwa. What's your view about what is happening? Yes, the law enforcement authorities, they have a task, they have a duty to perform. Then this is what we are saying. Some would say that perhaps, it's a milder version, but still with pollution consequences, what we used to see with the customs or standards organization or NAFDAC. You apprehend contraband, and then you make a bonfire, say of tires, for instance, in the open. So, but in the case of the pollution that we are seeing, creeks and rivers and other water bodies containing this oil slick, what's your reading of it?
Well, my take is not very different from what we've heard. Clearly, we have a problem with oil theft in Nigeria. We've seen the facts and the figures, very mind-boggling. 40 billion naira being lost each day due to, and this is from NNPC figures, every day due to crude oil theft. However, the issue at hand is how do we begin to arrest the situation? I don't think that the dramatic and damaging methodology we're seeing is the best approach. Now, we need to have a holistic and sincere interrogation of the whole system. Let me begin with this. You have a battalion of military personnel in this region, ostensibly to police, to checkmate illegal refining, crude oil theft, bunkering, and all this stuff. In addition to the battalion, you have a plethora of security operatives, including private security companies that are being paid 50 billion every year, 50 billion naira every year to private security operatives in the region to checkmate oil theft. And yet, we see this massive outflow of crude oil that is meant for all of us. So that's where the holistic approach needs to begin. In addition to what we are seeing in terms of manpower deployment in the region, you also have maritime surveillance technology. The Navy has what they call the Falcon Eye. NIMASA has C4I or something like that, MPSC I3. All these things designed to checkmate the problem. Now, you also look at the extant laws. As a professor of law, we look at what the law says with regard to conduct. With reference here, you have the Armed Forces Act, which says that an officer who willfully and maliciously destroys property, public property, vessel, ship, aircraft, is if convicted in a court martial, is guilty of arson and is subject to life imprisonment. That's section 111 of the Armed Forces Act, which is applicable here. So,
but that's the mens rea there is willful.
Willful and malicious.
And malicious. But this is the cause. This is a hot pursuit.
Well, is it always hot pursuit? That's the question.
That's the presumption.
That's the question we have to ask. But then there's also another provision, Hydrocarbons Oil Refining Act, section 15, says that if you have reasonable suspicion as an officer that there is illegal refining going on, you may enter, even with force, I agree. But to dismantle or seize, the law doesn't say to destroy or blow up. And in legal coinage, we're always very careful. We've seen the choice of language. They didn't say destroy, they didn't say incinerate. So what I'm saying is there are clear legal parameters to conduct that should avert the catastrophic destruction we're seeing, is contributing to the release of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, a lot of greenhouse gases, in addition to the damage we're seeing to the ecosystem. So I think we need a holistic approach to deal with this problem.
Okay, as we make progress, perhaps you will let us know some of these approaches that you are preferring to deal with the menace that you're already seeing in the area. And let's bring in Idris Olubola Musa here, who is the Director General of the National Oil Spills Detection and Response Agency, NOTRA. Yours is about oil spills, but the spilling now has gone to a different dimension. You don't need to search again to see where oil is being spilled. It is all over the place. And of course, you've listened to other guests on this program, and I'm sure that you will have a better response in terms of being on ground. But these are primarily your area. When the oil spill is detected, you have an answer to that, or an action to take to that. So what is it for you in the entire scenario that we've seen ourselves now as far as the Niger Delta region is concerned?
Well, thank you very much for bringing me here today. It's an opportunity again to let Nigerians know what is being done to make sure that we have a cleaner and better environment. I've listened to two other colleagues on this program spoken, and I can see at the end of this discourse, we may be having a three-pronged solution from three different sources. One, yes, I'm an environmental scientist, and he is an architect, for instance, the first speaker. I'm a registered urban regional planner, and he's a professor of law. Good. So what we may be having here, the approaches may be one from the academia, as he is, the other one from an NGO, environmental NGO, and of course from my own side, as from the regulatory point of view. You see, the two speakers spoke as if there is a moderate, a legal entity, business entity that people just go to destroy. I think we should be able to separate what is right, what is wrong, what is legal, what is illegal. When we say crude oil theft, it goes to say that is an illegal activity. We cannot say, for instance, somebody has gone to the market to steal a bag of rice or a loaf of bread and say, oh, it's because he's hungry. That's why he's gone to steal. He has committed an act, illegal act. You see, when we look at this oil theft, like I already said, oil spill ordinarily in the civilized climate is supposed to be an accidental event. It's never meant to be a willful thing. Maybe in the course of maintenance, there could be human error. Maybe in the course of maintenance also, there could be some weak points in the oil facilities. Then there could be a spill. We say accidental. Then there is a rapid response to that. But in a situation where every day, you can see the report, the two speakers have put numbers to it. Every day, this is how much $1 billion that is lost. How? We must find out how. So what we see the security agencies do is, like the prof of law said, is dismantling. Dismantling can now be recategorized. But again, a situation has been done already. The environment has been messed up already. I've been to the field several times. I can tell you so many spots. As a matter of fact, based on the current statistics that we have, in terms of location, we have about 520 illegal refining sites. 520, not just guesswork, documented, geo-referenced, and mapped. I have the map, I can show you. So, and what happens from this? What the military did was maybe what we can call a wicked problem. A wicked problem is a problem where, providing a solution to that problem, the solution you provide is also a problem in itself. And it goes on in a vicious cycle. However, we have looked at this and said there are many ways to catch a rat. If you cannot stop illegal refinery, and if you cannot stop breaking, let us look at alternative. We'll be discussing that later, what we thought could really put all these things to check. But if you have opportunity of going on air, I mean going up by way of a chopper or using drone to check the mangrove forest in the Niger Delta, you'll be very amazed with what is there. A lot of the lush mangrove forests are now deserts on its own. And what you see down there is a mess of environment, fragile environment for that matter, the swarm. Very, very difficult to assess and to clean. In the world, the most difficult oil spill cleanup process is the one in the mangrove. How do you go with all the props? And then we have myriads of this in the Niger Delta. Even in Bodo, for instance, in Ogoni, where a cleanup is going on, what we have there is a situation where the little part that have been cleaned up is now being revegetated with mangrove seedlings, so that over time, within a period of time, we can have the mangroves back. But artisanal refining has not stopped. We have to put a stop to it. But like I said, there are many ways of putting an end to it.
No, but thank you very much, DG of Nostra. But when you see those visuals one more time and what you said, the ecosystem is virtually gone in the locations where these things are occurring. And the law enforcement agents, they have a duty to perform. They have a task to perform, to put these illegal refiners out of business. So what therefore can be done to ensure that, yes, you enforce the law, but you don't create an additional problem for the ecosystem? Because when you see, there are human beings who are living there. There's no way you can have any aquatic life. What would be your source of water? Potable water, for instance, in that kind of environment. Where will you get your fish from? And so on and so forth. What, in your view, therefore, will be the alternative ways, around this, while putting out of commission those criminal elements in the creeks?
Well, like I said, I gave you statistics of those sites that have been geo-referenced, mapped out. What we need to do is to clean up the place first, but it will take several billions of naira to do the cleanup. Based on what you have seen there, you clean up first, and not only clean up the swamp area that has been impacted, even the creeks and the creeklets. A number of them, you can't see just one bubble, a bubble. When you see a bubble from the creeklet or from the creek, that means there's a living thing there. But you can't see, sort of like Dead Sea. You have seen several clips of this thing being shown, a situation where somebody already stole crude oil, he burns it, and the next thing he does is to dump the residue inside the creek. And the same people drink from the same source. So what we need to do is to put a stop to this, like I said, begin the cleanup and ensure that the people who engage in this artisanal refining do not come back to that. And that's why you said, sometime back, under the leadership of Senator Itainang, who was a senior special assistant to the president, former president on Nigerian affairs, we tried to put up some efforts at dissuading these people. Let me tell you, they don't even call themselves illegal refiners. They call themselves domestic refiners, the Domestic Refining Owners Association of Nigeria. The caliber you see there are not refracts. Graduates of petroleum engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, name it. They were here in Abuja. We had interface with them. In fact, there was a summit in Sheraton Hotel, Ladi Kwali Hall, where the former vice president was a guest to address them. And there and then we decided that, look, if we have been using a method to stop these people before, how many people do you see usually arrested? Few. Those are not the people. The people who can do this have never been arrested. Or it's the reference that they just put on television and say these are the people. Those are not the people. Yes, and these people who have said, okay, let us find the means. Do what we call modular refining. The modular refining we are talking about is not the type that you see being licensed now. There are people in Nigeria. We have institutions of government. We have Naseni, we have ABU Zaria, we have FUPRI in Warri, we have Proda. All these people can be brought together. We agreed they will bring prototype. Refinery that these people can be used, and you put them in cooperatives.
Really, you have raised a number of issues, which I'm not sure.
And these are the people, these are the people who ordinarily will be the one to checkmate all the riffraffs that are in that business. So when you see the people policing themselves, it makes more sense and more security implementation than having to run against those you don't know.
You don't know. So really, the event you mentioned at Sheraton, I was privileged to be there. I actually mastered that ceremony and engaged some of the young men you are talking about. Like you said, they're not riffraffs. The young men that came are young graduates. And one of them, who actually is I think the assistant secretary also, told me that, sir, as we speak on that occasion, that they are loading in the high sea refined diesel. They presented three, should I say, categories of diesel. They presented different colors, depicting different qualities of what they have in stock. So they're not just refining. I'm not sure that what I'm seeing on screen, with respect to the spillage we saw, is what those people have. There are people who have more sophisticated, arrangement for that. Even the University of Technology in Bayelsa, the vice chancellor of that school, was on that occasion, and he said that they have a mini refining machine in his school.
ABU has.
So now, who is harnessing them? Nobody is. So, I mean, maybe on another day we'll talk about the reasons for the emergence of these young men who are refining. We lack fuel in the country. Fuel is, of course, it's been imported, as we all know. And the Thailand you mentioned talked about bringing those young men in and formalizing them, license them, watch what they're doing, and make them part of the business. That was what he was going for, but nobody listened. Now we're talking about environmental degradation that I think is bringing about another. And these are people you may not be able to track. You said it that the real men are not there. The people they catch in that environment are not the real men that own the place.
Yes,
so
that's right.
On that note, I'd like to bring in again our guest in New York. I hope you see there with us, architect Nimo Bassi. Yeah, can you come in on this aspect of the conversation with respect to what can be done? Is it necessary to formalize the activities of those young men to see how they can come into the mix of oil production in Nigeria?
Well, I must apologize. I'm at a hotel lobby right now. There's a lot of noise here. So make it difficult for me to even hear the question. But I've heard the response from the Nostra boss, and I do appreciate that they're facing a very serious problem because you're trying to detect oil spill and it's happening all around you. But I think the issue on the ground is how who is compounding the problem?
Sorry, Nimo Bassi, it looks like there is a freeze there in your connection. We'll return to you if the network is good. Back to the studios, Professor John Osonwa. Nimo, are you back? All right, so we understand you're not back still, but back to the conversation. Look, the longer term solution will be get rid of these illegal refiners, however they define themselves, whether they are domestic or what they are doing is illegal. Yes. What is the source of their crude? They don't explore for oil. That is, you steal another person's crude and then you are refining. Yes. I mean, that's a clear case of theft or stealing as it goes. But what we are saying is that Demo Bassi or yourself will say, look, if you drop a liter, for instance, of crude, or let's say a barrel, since you mentioned the barrels, you drop a barrel of crude in the waters, you know how far the ripples will go. No question about that. And we have seen, sometimes, with Nigerians will say, oh, international best practices. International best practices, you see, for instance, a stricken tanker on the high seas, and it's like the whole world is galvanized to be sure that the spill is contained, the extent of the spill is contained. People are mobilized to the beaches to do cleanup, but it looks like in this case, vessels are being destroyed. I mean, when you see the visuals, you ask yourself, how can human beings, survive in this ecosystem? So, what, from your point of view, should be the environmental responsibility for what we are seeing now? Because there is an existential threat to the ecosystem on account of law enforcement.
I agree. As I said, we need a holistic review of what is going on. The first one is we need to have training of the people who are out there trying to intercept, to arrest, to dismantle, destroy, whatever they are doing. There needs to be some kind of environmental training in the proper methodology to use to deal with the situation. I don't know whether that is happening, but it's not sinking in, or we're not doing enough. Those who are at the forefront of policing our coastal waters, checkmating illegal refining, need to be trained properly. And the good news is we have, as DG stated, we have a lot of institutions with a lot of expertise in this area. We also have a lot of agencies that can help. So there needs to be that synergy, there needs to be that interface between those at the forefront of checkmating the menace and those who are at the institutional level to see that what they are doing is correct. That's one issue. Second issue that we need to look at, the judicial system is also implicated in this. We have heard stories, and by reference, by deductive reasoning, we also see it happening in other arenas, where if you arrest someone and you bring them through the judicial system, it can take 10 years for the matter to be resolved. Let's say you've impounded a vessel and it's being immobilized somewhere, and now you have a case that lingers for 5-10 years. During that time, that vessel will begin to leak whatever you have impounded into the water. So there needs to be expeditious judicial adjudication, and perhaps a special court. In some, if we can do traffic court for traffic offenses, this is a serious menace. So perhaps we should set up a special court for these kinds of situations where things will move swiftly. We impound the crude. We now repurpose it for public use. I don't think it should be burned. That's a lot of money. This one that was burned, the 800,000 liters, that was about $86 million that went up in flames. Imagine what that can do for the infrastructure.
I was just wondering, Professor John Osonwa, we understand that Nimbu Bassey is back to us. Well, I mean, that's a legal dimension to it. If it is stolen crude, somebody owns the crude, and now you incinerate it, well, that's double loss, as it were. I mean, the original owner loses, and then the government, which ordinarily is supposed to benefit from it, loses. But much more seriously is the environmental impact. Professor Osonwa here has provided some recommendations, improved or better environmental training for persons who are involved in the current security operations around that location. He's also talked about ramping up the judicial system to have special prosecution and speedy prosecution as well for persons who are involved so that the dangers are not compounded. What would you say, Edimo Bassi, with respect again to environmental responsibility on this existential issue of the damage to the ecosystem as a result of law enforcement operations?
Thank you. I believe that one of the things that needs to be done is for responsible agencies of government, those in the Ministry of Environment, North Right itself, the Health Ministry of Health, to have a round table with the military. Maybe they've been doing this in the background, but this needs to be escalated. We have to have a security force that understands that environmental security is very important. Now, the kind of pollution going on, if not checked, would render that region, many parts of the Niger Delta, uninhabitable. And that cannot, no matter how much illegal refining or oil theft is stopped, if you don't rescue the environment, it's clearly something that is like shooting one's foot or cutting one's nose to spite the face or whatever you may call it. So we need to the military must understand the environmental health issues, and they need to sit down and talk about it. Because if the people their right to life is truncated by blowing up illegal refineries, setting boats on fire, and even recording them and making a show of them on TV, I think it's a bad day for the country. We have to have a clear understanding that if the environment is unsafe, then our right to life is directly challenged. It's not only about money. We need to invest in the cleanup. We need to invest in proper policing with understanding. Have dialogues with the communities, with the people involved. I heard you mention about, the artisanal associations. If people get to the point of having that kind of association, it shows that something seriously has broken in our system. And we should be worried about that.
Yes, indeed, worried about that is I should call it a gallant association for that matter, because they are well spread in that area, and of course their tentacles are well spread. And of course, from what you've told us, Idris Lubola Musa, I would like you to round off now. Professor Songma talked about plethora of security operatives in the area. He talked about tuning as well. Now, who are those operating in that environment, and how well trained and mannered are there? Because sometimes you give instructions, people go and do the opposite. Definitely, in terms of destruction of those stuff, they are not the remedy, because it's adding to the already bad situation.
Thank you very much again. The destruction of those arsenal refining sites is not an end remedy in itself. There are still some things that need to be done. For instance, noting the negative impact of such destruction on the environment earlier on, working with the Nigerian Navy, there has been what we call harmonized standard operating procedure, which comprises the agency, NOSDRA by me, the Nigerian Navy itself, and some other agencies of government, Federal Ministry of Health. There was NEOMA, and there was Department of Fisheries. We had meetings several times and drew out what we call harmonized standard operating procedure. In other words, if you are going to embark on dislocating these people, these are the ways you need to go. So that is one. And based on that, a number of arrests were made and not destroyed, but handed over to the responsible prosecuting agencies. But then, how long does it take to get the result?
Are you addressing the issue of connivance with some security operatives?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But
I'm saying, are you addressing that issue, because it has come up over time?
Yes. The issue of connivance is as a result of a thriving business. If you remove that business, connivance will definitely be out. Just like Prof said, if those who are arrested are now prosecuted early and then we get result, that will be one. Secondly, we have said, if you try a method to stop a problem and it's not stopping, then look for alternatives. That's why I said there is a need to look at these people. We suggested at that time that let's have 3 modular refineries by the oil producing state. In other words, we have about 27.
So one-time leader in this country said,
yes,
I'm not stopping you, that whenever there is a thriving business of the one we're talking about, and
yes,
it is not stopping,
yes,
then there are some elements in positions of authority whose hands are in it. And that is why I don't know whether that's applied here. It can be applied here.
You cannot rule that out. It may apply. I won't say it applies. I will say it may apply. Otherwise, when we provided preferred solutions, why is the solution not taken? For instance, building, this issue I mentioned to you, if we started at that time, if those who should give not to it, gave not to it, this is about 18 months ago.
Well,
some of those things would have been.
Thank you very
in
much.
The past.
I'm sorry to interject. We
Yes.
have a second topic, but this is an issue that we'll have to return to at some point. I was glad you were mentioning the replanting of the mangrove in Ogoni land. Ogoni cleanup has been on. We don't have an update as to what has happened, but to tell you how challenging it is with respect to Ogoni, it took UNEP to instigate that. So what would then happen to several other communities in the oil-producing parts of the country where you have this oil spill, either accidental, but now arising from the destruction of stolen crude along with the assets. It's a very big issue that, of course, impacts everybody. So we'll return to this subject matter at some future point. We have a second topic, but we'd like to thank our guests who have been with us this morning. Professor John Osonwa, climate change and environmental expert, thank you very much for your insights. We also would like to appreciate Architect Nibo Basi, Executive Director, Health of Mother Earth Foundation. He joined us via Zoom from New York. Nibo, always a delight having you, but sorry for the glitch that we had a moment ago. Well, we hope you're able to catch some rest until you get on with your activities later this morning. Architect Nibo Basi, we appreciate you. Here in the studios, Idris Musa, Director General of NOSTRA, that's the National Oil Spills Detection and Response Agency. Thank you very much also for being our guest.
Thank you very much.
It's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with our conversation, this time on a second topic.
All right, we thank you for staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, the second leg of today's show. This year's Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN, is underway here in the nation's capital of Abuja. And we have in the studio this morning 2 members of the body to speak on the conference. First, let's welcome Dr. James Ekarere Neminebo. Dr. Neminebo is the President and Chairman of Council Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Also, part of to this conversation is Dr. Kayode Fashua. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN. Dr. Fashua, good to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so let's begin with the President and Chairman of Council. This is the ANAN 28th Annual National Conference.
Exactly, sir.
What is it all about this year?
Oh, beautiful. ANAN, like all of us know, is one of the accountancy professional bodies in Nigeria. And every year we organize gatherings like this we call National Conference. And for this year, we are celebrating, we are having the 28th Annual Conference, and it's hosted here in Abuja. It's all about gathering our people, part of our corporate governance, that every year all our members must have a conference to come together in the capital city. And the conference topic for this year is very, very important. Because of the changing time in the country, government has just changed hands, and we need to educate our accountants because we are the gatekeepers. Telling them early is to put government in place because all our members are in the public service. Few are with the private sector. But those, like IFAC called us, we are the greatest. Anan is the greatest in the public sector accounting. Most of our members work with government. So if they're able to bring enough statistics, of course, government works with statistics, data. So if our accountants are able to get correct and good data to give to government for governance, government will be more informed and serve us very well. The purpose is to get our members abreast with current trend in accounting.
Yes, I mean, you have said it all. It's an annual ritual, you know, that you observe on yearly basis. So with, of course, reference to a particular theme. Of course, you have highlighted the theme, which is the accounting profession and changing dynamics of the ecosystem. Apart from government sector, where your members, you know, chiefly operate, there are people in the private sector who are still accountants. Are they incorporated in this conference, or is this one for those who are working in government?
In fact, our conference is a compulsory gathering. Just like we have an MCPD for training, our conference is for all members and it's compulsory. So it's for both people who work with government, both in the private sector. Everybody is mandatorily asked to attend this annual conference.
How long is the conference for?
It's from Monday. Yesterday was registration. Today is the opening ceremony. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll have lectures all through. And in the evening, we have a cultural night. You know, while you are doing accounting, you are busy showing out figures. There should be some social elements. So Wednesday is going to be the meeting of it all, a cultural night. Before this time, if you remember, we used to do road walk on Wednesdays. After the road walk, we come here and address press. But this year, we decided to change it to a cultural night. Every zone will come out to display their culture.
Okay. All right, Dr. Fashua, you know, we've been having conferences. I know what I ask myself, and I'd like to ask you now, is when you talk about feedback after a conference, or perhaps a follow-up, or what is the value addition after a conference, do you have a mechanism, you know, by which you cross-check or do a back check to say, look, last year's conference, what did we come up with last year's conference? What we deliberated on? Were they being inculcated in the practice of accounting in Nigeria? You have such mechanisms so that this year's annual conference will also be perhaps encapsulated in some of the ones we've done before that are going to be yielding dividends in your operational cycle.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, we have feedbacks every year. If you look at the topic of the conference, the theme of the conference for this year, you'll discover that it's really apt, and it's actually a product of feedbacks of what we have from previous year's conference. Culminating is what is happening in the world today. We're talking about the changing dynamics in the ecosystem and how it relates to the accountancy profession. Accountancy profession is also a is a currency profession today. It's not what it used to be before now. Before now, when you talk about an accountant, you talk about being conservative. This is the only way you must do things. But today, a lot of things have crept in to change the accountancy profession, especially the information technology. And so we need to bring our members also abreast with those changes in the dynamics of the ecosystem as it affects the accountant, so that they can be much more efficient and effective in their service delivery to their to the various stakeholders. So the mechanism is always in place. At the end of every conference, we come back together. What is the feedback that we got from members? What is the feedback that we got from... You see, the conference is not only even for members. There are people who are not members of ANAN who also register for the conference, who will also be part of the conference. The guest speakers are largely not members of, like for instance, the chairman of this year conference is Alan Oyema, chairman of Airpeace. He's a barrister. The keynote speaker is someone who is regular here, Professor Uche Waleke, who is a capital market specialist. We have an array of lead presenters and discussants who are not also accountants, but bringing ideas from their various disciplines into the accounting profession to be able to enlighten members. And so at the end of the day, we do a review. And it is that review that always form a basis for the next year conference themes and various topics.
Sorry, to add to him, see, every end of every conference, we come out with a communique.
Yes.
The communique is sent out to relevant bodies in government. And we have monitoring units that monitors the implementation of our communique. The areas that were properly implemented, we look at it and select other areas to touch. So we go through all spectrum. That is the mechanism, the feedback mechanism that we place because of our communique and the monitoring unit of the communique that we send to establishments.
Dr. Fashwa identified, for instance, the infusion of IT into the accounting profession as one of the reasons for the choice of the topic in terms of the changing dynamics in the ecosystem. What else is important that is happening to the accounting profession that warrants this choice of the theme?
Before this time, the accountant of those days, like when I schooled, there was no International Financial Reporting Council or regulations, standards. We were going on SAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. That's all. The moment you are abreast with the Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, you do your posting. But today, the International Accountancy Body said no. The standards you apply in your country should be all over the world, so that when an investor is coming, he knows he's coming to meet the same financial terrain he has in his own place. And this is why government spends money to train people on international standards in accounting. And we professional bodies should do the same. Assist government to train our accountants on these international standards. And talking of international standards, like you asked, IT has come in. Robotics. Before this time, you go to the bank and you meet a cashier, and cashier pays you. Today, a machine pays you. The machine counts your money. These are the changing dynamics in accounting. And members, you see, if you say you're an accountant, you must be abreast with this infusion of technology in accounting. Just last week, we were in a West African gathering of accountants. And incidentally, international bodies again are introducing sustainability accounting.
What is that?
While the company operates in the environment, you don't destroy the environment because you are saving profits. Plow enough profit to make the environment be alive. The people should be alive. The environment should be alive for you to continue in your business, and so the people too should be having good living. Okay, sustainability accounting.
It used to be said that accountants, sorry, with the greatest respect to them, they don't pay money, even if that money is your own.
Even when there is money, he will tell you there's no money. Yet there is money. He will tell you that there are many issues, whatever. Okay, you see, growing up, you know those days in high school, we used to have a lecturer, an accountant, he will come and tell you, when he comes to the class, the person says, look, account was always balance. Every corresponding debit must have a corresponding credit. So what, that's perhaps the elemental aspect of it. Yes. Now we're talking about a stage where you are chartered accountants. If if I'm right. The IT is just an enabler.
Yeah.
But then the profession is still the profession. Now, do you have a way of checking your personnel or your members who are working in different agencies or organizations who are also involved in corrupt practices? There's no head of an establishment that can steal without the accounting man, because he is the person that will be the enabler, that will create the environment, that will make it easy for a politician to steal money. Do you check your people in terms of corrupt practice? Some of you are becoming even procurement officers. Some accountants are doing all manner of jobs. Like you said, infusion. That does not debase the original concept of accounting. But when you want to infuse, because you are trying to practice and bring it about international best practice, there should be a stop somewhere. Because in Nigeria, in our own case, we want to do an international practice, we still add some form of Nigerianness. Nigerianness in it.
Local content.
Local. So, come in, Dr. Fashua.
Yeah, so this is always a familiar question that you ask accountants. Every time, like you said, there can be fraud in the system. Like the president said, accountants are the gatekeepers. So that fund must have should have fraudulently gone out of the system through the gates, and the gatekeeper is there that allowed it to go out. The blames are always put on the accountants. But the truth of the matter, like I always say everywhere, is that the issue of fraud, corruption is what concerns everybody and not just the accountants. And so what the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria does for its members is that on a regular basis, we have regular training. Because like for instance, one of the topics under this theme for this conference is the accountants and economic and financial crime prevention. So how do you go about it? How do you assist the system to ensure that you don't do that? The accountancy profession has its ethics, and its ethics should not and must not permit corruption and fraud. And so these are some of the things that are reiterated for our members in all our training. Apart from this conference is just a gathering of all our members and non-members at the same time to discuss on topical issues in the country and in the accountancy profession, and how to be able to provide solutions to the government at the end of it. Like the president said, a communique will be issued and so on. But apart from that, we also have what we call our mandatory continuing professional development programs, which we run 6 times in a year minimum in each of the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. And at every of the session of this program, the topic under discussion is always rife. Now, apart from that, you can tell someone what to do, but you see, we're not all the same. An individual will still do what he or she will do based on the condition that he or she finds himself. Some people are just corrupt. It's not just accountants that are corrupt. Other people also aid the accountants in their corruption. And so the association has a mechanism in place. In case you are found guilty of such, we have the investigative panel. We have a tribunal that has the equal status of a federal high court in the system, so that whatever verdict that tribunal gives in Annan, it is only the appeal court that you can go to look for redress and so on. So we have all these things in place, and our members know this, and so this puts them in check in conducting their affairs as accountants in their various organizations.
All right, Dr. Fashua, thank you
Sorry,
very
let me
much.
add a little to it.
Yes, I want, as you are weighing in, I would like you to dwell more again on the ethical concerns.
Yeah, that's what really
On the ethical concerns, because when you read about and hear about the financial leakages in the public sector, a question obviously arises: where were the gatekeepers?
Yes.
And if this training programs, continuous learning education opportunities that your members have take place regularly, what is the outcome?
You see, that Anan is very conscious of ethics. So we teach ethics, just like, we have a college, the Nigerian College of Accountancy. And every of our accountant must pass through the Nigerian College of Accountancy. Apart from the major course, accounting, ethics goes through all the years. Because whether you like it or not, you must have high ethical values before you're able to protect even your personal estates, not to talk of public estates. And so we inculcate ethical values to our students from the beginning. And even on the MCPD he talked about, and including this conference, ethics is the greatest topic. Because
it's a great topic, but why do we continue to read about all of these instances of malfeasance in the public environment?
Like he said, well, it depends on people. There are some persons who can stand very tall. Even if a boss, a superior, pushes it on you, you must do this. So, well, put it in writing. But even if you put it in writing, I do not like it, I walk out of the system. I have done it. So many accountants have done it. I would rather do and go and establish on my own than facing the leg lights. Because you have serious ethical values. So it's a thing of, incidentally, most accountants are pushed into this malfeasance. Most accountants, because they've not been able to train their strong ethical values to rub it off on the system. If you are strong, you can tell, man, sorry, instead of me to do this, I better step out.
But is this stepping out, Kieran, I'm sorry, Dr. Fashaw, you can weigh in, but is this stepping out that is the issue, or to say that, look, this is the rule, I will only abide by the rule? The gentleman who is there can't fire you without just cause. If you're in the public sector, we know who your employer is anyway. So it's not the man who is saying that. But is it because of the quid pro quo nature that allows some of these persons to fall for it? Because it's worrisome, obviously. Yes.
See, like I said earlier, what we must know first and foremost is that an accountant is a staff personnel, not a line personnel. Is there in advisory capacity. As the accountant, you have a chief executive who calls the shots, like I said. And that's why some years back, discovered that accountants were asking for, in the public sector, they were asking for hazard allowance. Because their job, the job of an accountant is also hazardous, depending on who your chief executive officer is. So like I said, so you have an option of saying, okay, so I'm walking out. So where are you walking out to? In the first instance. And secondly, you have an option of disobeying your chief executive that is corrupt. Because you see, we talk about accountants, but the fact is that the accountant cannot just be fraudulent on his own without a push from the top or from somewhere, in most cases. And we're not looking at that top. And that's what makes the accountant to be endangered that asks for a hazard allowance. And so what part of what the association has in place as a mechanism is that our members who are faced with this kind of situation can also write to us. Mm-hmm. And when you write to us,
in confidence,
of course, in confidence, in confidence, we have steps that we can take to protect you. But generally, in such situation where you have a chief executive who breaks down on you that this is what you should do, the financial regulations are there.
Okay.
But like I said, you only advise.
Yes.
But you see, when he puts pressure on you, you document those things and keep them somewhere.
Yeah, but you know, the funny thing there is this, that, you know, on you, and which in most cases people abide by it, you know, they begin to also open channels for themselves as well. Because if the CEO is taking, I can as well do the same, even without consulting him. I've seen a situation where a CEO gave an instruction to a chief accountant. The chief accountant said no to that because he didn't feel it was a good decision taken. The CEO resorted to his subordinate, you know, the next in power in the accounting, and she got her way. All right, the junior person signed it and so on. So it's all.
Good. See, the angle you are coming from now. So the CEO bypassed him.
Because he refused to play.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
It happens. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's a Nigerian environment, so we know what obtains. Now, let me ask you this, Mr. President. What are your expectations from this year's conference?
Maybe let's go back a little to this question of, see, Annan was the first in this country to bring up the whistle blowing before government took it. We were the first to have it, sensitized government. Whistle blowing is very important. When, like I said, you breathe on top of my head, this thing must be done. And I tell the regulations did not permit it. And he said no. And I have a professional body. I approach them. And they will do the blowing for me. And I actually came up with the whistle-blowing policy in this country. What we are doing...
Is the whistle still on?
Oh, yeah. It's part of Annan.
Oh, okay.
Our members know it. We tell them every time. Where they are at crossroads, they come to us and we blow the whistle for them. Or they can blow it. Government came to cap it by giving financial inducement to whistleblowers.
Incentive.
Incentive, yes. Did it solve matters? I do not know. That I can't guarantee. Perhaps it solved.
He was asking about your expectations at the end of the conference, yes.
We're in a society. We've been discussing. What does government want from accountants? What does the private sector? How will the economy grow? These are the expectations. We want to tell them, these are the statistics, these are the data you have to work towards to bring about a turnaround in the economy. In tax, what incentives? How do you go about? To making the private sector or the corporate owner of a company breathe at least or from overtax. We teach our members, we work with them on taxation, on accounting, the best ways to apply, which are, of course, current standards. And that will bring about a turnaround in the economy. That will bring good service in the government sector. Whatever we are doing, telling our members, is purely for them to offer good service to their stakeholders. And that is the best of service that everybody needs.
We've touched on the broad theme for this year's conference. And then we also highlighted one of the topics for conversation around the ethical question that we just discussed. What other topics are lined up for discussion so that we can have an insight? Yes.
A number of topics by very erudite scholars. And we have topics like the professional accountant and management of emerging economies. Agreed, Nigeria is no more an emerging economy, but what are the things emerging economies go through?
What are we now?
It's an advanced economy.
Nigeria?
In Africa. Nigeria is an advanced economy.
All right,
in Africa.
Continue, yeah.
We are gone past the days of emerging. Except that that's the reason why we want to compare the time we were emerging and where we are. How have we fared? If emerging economies are applying these rules, why did we not get to the top like the Western world have gone. That's the comparison we want to make. And we are bringing a very fine resource person to tell us the difference when we're emerging and where we are now and how we'll get to the top.
It's a potentially provocative lecture, and I'll be interested in that. Yes. In terms of nomenclature, it's no longer emerging advanced. Please continue. Yes.
And we have topics like the professional accountants and promotion of corporate governance. We've been talking of a CEO will go down to a junior officer. Corporate governance does not allow you these days. You must act in accordance to the rules set up by the federal government. Corporate governance is very important. Even as accountants, your reporting system has to be followed. The way you hold meetings has to be monitored by the Financial Reporting Council.
Okay, well, gentlemen, it's been a very interesting discussion, on accounting and your conference coming up, which is underway, really. You just started. I would like to appreciate you being here this morning to expatiate on the conference. Dr. James Karere Nemidebo, President and the Chairman of Council Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, Anan, we thank you.
Thank you
once
very
again.
much, sir.
And of course, the elder brother of one of our regulars, Dr. Kayode Olusola Fashua, Chief Executive Officer, Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, we will avail ourselves of the opportunity to come and listen to accountants.
That's right. You're invited.
Yeah.